Okay, what I'm doing here is doing a repair on my Scout X-4 from Walkira. Not 100% sure what the issue is, but my troubleshooting leads me to believe that it possibly is the main power board, and that is the advice that I have from Walkira Australia. So what I'm going to do is to replace that. Now obviously I've already taken the top of the body off. I won't make a video about that, that's pretty simple to work out. But as you can see, when you open the guts, there is plenty of guts in there. I suggest that you do what I do, and that is take some photos before you start pulling anything apart. So here we have the main power board. Ultimately we have 4 sets of leads to solder on to the battery electrical connections to the speed controllers that go to the 4 motors, and there are 2 plugs that need to go into the right place, and hopefully these markings here are the right places for us to put our main controller and our Bluetooth data link. Now the way I'm choosing to go about this is to actually desolder and resolder the power board, leaving the motors and the speed controllers in situ. They'll hopefully just give me something nice and firm to solder to without having to chase them around or trying to wedge them, so that I can solder them easier. So what I'll be looking at doing is removing the screws that hold the main power board in, and any cables that connect to things like the undercarriage power boards. Over this side there's a USB and data link, and so on from there. I have taken the whole guts out, and you can take the whole mother power board and engines and speed controllers out in one go. It gets a bit like operating on the guts of some sort of dead sea monster with bits and pieces going everywhere. So hopefully by doing it in situ, that will be okay. And we can see that already that main power board is loose, so I'll just proceed to the desoldering steps. Okay, so before I desolder, just to make access to the soldering points on the speed controllers, I am going to do some removal of some wires. Each speed controller has a little cable that plugs into a port, which has a black and white wires running to them, and that's just going to make it easier for me to get into where I need to desolder. I'm also going to cut the little cable ties that bundle that wire and the power cable wires together, just to make access easier. You're going to have to do some wriggling and jiggling of bits and pieces as we go. One of the things is the receiver. In my case I've got an RX709, that's in Australia, and that just pops out. It has double-sided tape on the bottom, which I believe will be the case also for the Bluetooth data link and the main control board. Okay, with those power leads cut, you can see the motherboard is now much more loose. What we need to do now is disconnect. We can either disconnect the undercarriage electrical connections on both sides here from the appropriate plug in the appropriate port. I'm going to choose to leave them plugged in and actually undo the screws, because that way I'm a little bit more confident, because there's so many wires already, it's easy to get them very confused. Also running down this side is a cable that goes to the USB, and from here a cable that goes to the controller data link type of wires. So I'll go ahead and remove those and see how much more loose it becomes. The data cable also goes down the other side there, and that can be, as you can see, it sort of goes all over the place. So what I'm going to choose to do is undo it at the connection on the main body, which is buried down in the guts there somewhere. You can see it disappearing in there, if not actually where it is, but that's just simply held on by 2 screws, and the connection comes away fairly easily. So I'll undo that, and the undercarriage leg mounts. Now with that, finally, there's only 2 things that are holding the motherboard onto or attaching it to the main body shell, and that is the aerial cables from the receivers. Now it's important to note that basically if you've got the Bluetooth, you will have 2 receivers, and therefore you'll have 2 sets of aerials, and one aerial which is on the will point up and one will point down, and you need to, from each receiver you have to have one pointing up and one pointing down. So with 4 aerials, that means you end up with 2 pointing down and 2 pointing up, or across I should say perhaps. So I'll just take that out. That releases the little block there, and inside there's a little block which you can just push out and then slide the aerials back through. In fact, once you've actually removed those screws, you can pull the aerials through without taking the mounting block off. You can just pull them through. I don't know how well you can see there, but I have marked just with a felt pen, a CD marker, that one that says front left vertical FLV, and the others obviously front left horizontal, and the same on the other side, just to help me put them back in the same place. And from there we have the power board and all the rest of the attachments removed. So I'm just going to go ahead and desolder the speed controllers and get that ready for when putting the new board back in.